My Little Inferno by G.M. Blackjack. Chapter 6. Explosion. Pinkie Pie was the most prolific user of the Little Inferno entertainment fireplace. She had burnt every last item in the catalog, in addition to hundreds of her own belongings, even the ones she usually had stashed away for emergencies. She had begun to notice patterns in the flames, odd effects, peculiar happenings. Some items were not like the other items. Little Inferno entertainment fireplace had secrets, mysteries, ponderances. The core stared back at her, somehow cutting into her soul with its closed eyes. It dared her to try it with its presence. "Oh, you drive a hard bargain, Mr. Core," Pinkie giggled. "All right, you win. I'll do it." She grabbed several of the interesting items and shoved them all in the enclosure at once. Then she lit them on fire, watching as the streaks of fire swirled towards the core, causing the gears to rotate faster and faster. The mechanisms started to shake with increasing vibrations. The wiring began to pop, the fire jumping erratically. The bricks that made up the enclosure began to crack, and dust began to fall all around the soot-covered room. Pinkie grinned as the fire poured out of the Little Inferno. "Cool," she said, backing away so as not to be burned. She wasn't that crazy. Who wanted to be toast? Then she saw it. The serene core. The sleepy face. It began to open its eyes. It basked Pinkie in a blindingly bright, holy light. "Ooh, shiny," Pinkie said, staring deeply into it, finding herself unable to turn away. The light engulfed her, and in the last moment, a look of panic crossed her face. Uh-oh. This was not spring. This was not green. There was no sun. Fluttershy had long ago given up on making a genuine smile when she was out and about. It was always faked. The world around Ponyville was drab and gray. Life was moving away from the once quaint town. Now it was nothing but smokestacks. She walked, trying her best to look happy among the trails of smoke that coalesced above, making the entire sky an ominous gray. And most of all, no pony seemed to care. They just treated the smoky air and the sooty ground like it was normal. Even Applejack didn't notice that her own apple trees were producing sick apples because of this. Everything just looked sickly, like the world had lost its will to live. Fluttershy shook her head. "Don't think like that." She continued her way through town, still trying her best to be welcoming and kind to all she saw. It was getting harder with each passing return, the sticky soot multiplying in quantity every time she did so. And whenever she looked up, she felt uneasy. Everything just felt wrong. She trotted over to Sugar Cube Corner, ready to order some sweets. The ground started to tremble powerfully. The cakes ran out of Sugar Cube Corner screaming, but Fluttershy didn't see Pinkie come out. She did see smoke coming out of the building, though. "Oh no," Fluttershy said. Then the entire top half of Sugar Cube Corner exploded in a white-hot ball of fire, sending torrents of heat upwards into the sky. The rest of Sugar Cube Corner was reduced to ash in a matter of seconds, leaving almost nothing behind. The scent of burnt candy and pastries filled the air, the wreck smoldering. Dozens of ponies had gathered, staring at the wreckage. None moved for the longest time. Fluttershy flapped into the air first, drawing herself closer to the charcoal. She looked down from above, finding that virtually everything was unrecognizable, burnt, charred, and smoking. She sniffed. There was a smell here besides burnt wood, sugar, and smoke. What was it? It smelled good. She gagged when she realized what it was, shutting her mouth with her hoof and screaming inwardly. Cooked meat. And it wasn't quite like any of the meat smells she had encountered when cooking for her animals. She could see a charred pony body under a piece of wood. It was slightly pink. She managed to direct herself out of the smoldering wreck before passing out and dropping from the sky with a thud. That was when the ponies started screaming. While the ponies scrambled in a panic, the heat of the wreckage billowed up into the air, cutting through the smoke cloud. For the briefest of moments, the sun was visible. Barely conscious, Fluttershy managed to look up and see the glorious fiery orb moments before it was covered up again. She started crying. What had she been doing that caused that? Why? What would bring that about? She couldn't think of any reason, and it was really tearing her apart. Twilight roared in rage, her coat going white and her mane to fire. She threw a beaker into the little inferno, its glass shattering into 1,000 pieces. Tears in her eyes, she just kept throwing more and more things in. She didn't care what they were. Just burn. Burn. Burn! Burn! She cut up a table into several pieces and fed it through. She didn't wait for it to complete burning. She just kept adding more, and more, and more. Twilight, what are you? Twilight threw Spike into the enclosure, though the flames were harmless as usual. He crawled out just in time to avoid getting beamed by a centrifuge. Twilight, calm down! Spike, Twilight growled, eyes flashing. Shut up. Spike's eyes widened as he took several steps back, extremely concerned. Twilight, I said shut up. Do not... She didn't finish the thought as she was overcome by another flood of tears, her fire going out. Why? Why? What did she do? What did this? I have no idea, Twilight, Spike said, hugging her tight. The two sat in the intense flow of the little Inferno entertainment fireplace. They didn't even notice it was there. What? Twilight and Spike looked up to see Fluttershy standing there, face red, mane haggard. Fluttershy? Spike said. How can you not see it? The Pegasus cried. Look! She pointed both of their heads at the Inferno. It's just fire, Fluttershy, Twilight said. Just fire? Fluttershy screamed. This is what killed Pinkie! Twilight stood up, tall, angry. This has nothing to do with it. The Inferno is perfectly safe. Fluttershy roared. Pinkie was obsessed with that thing. She had an entire room covered completely in that sticky soot. She scared me with how intense she was about it. That doesn't mean it killed her. Well, I see it one of two ways, Fluttershy yelled through her tears. It either drove her to pyromania, or it broke. And that was a big explosion to just be some fire she set. Stop being stupid, Twilight yelled back. You're in denial. Obvious denial. Fluttershy slapped Twilight. Think about it. Get a hold of yourself. Twilight glared. Fluttershy, this conversation is over. The door is... What is it, Spike? I think she's right, Spike said. What? Think about it. It makes sense. There's enough energy in that thing to do it. It's the only thing we're sure she has that can possibly make an explosion that big. Twilight's brain began to work furiously. How could it have been caused without the Inferno? What could Pinkie have done? What could someone else have done? There had to be something else. Then it hit her like a train. Why did there have to be something else? She slowly turned her head at the little Inferno fireplace with fear. The serene core looked back, unmoving. She lit her horn, scanning her own mind. Deep, deeper, still deeper, she looked into herself, analyzing. Had she not been looking exactly for it, she would not have found it. Compulsia exponentia, she said, a haunted voice coming out of her mouth. What? Fluttershy said. A mental spell designed to work over long periods in the background, so as not to draw attention to itself, Twilight said, slowly working her magic in her mind to remove the compulsia. I think it makes you want to keep using the little Inferno. Spike blinked. It got me! He grabbed his head. Get it out! Twilight nodded, doing what she had done to herself, to Spike. Then she turned to the balcony, her face expressionless. She walked out into the air of outside, a look of guilt appearing on her face. She looked out over Ponyville. The streets of smoke looked like wounds to her now. The dark cloud above them appeared as an evil entity slowly coalescing overhead. The world was lifeless, gray, drab, pointless, ruined. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself, looking upwards once more. The smoke above shook with magic. Something was happening up there. Something powerful. She bit her lip. "What do I do now?" Spike and Fluttershy glanced at each other. They had no idea. All their eyes flew wide open in fear as they heard what sounded like a laugh coming from the sky. My Little Inferno by G.M. Blackjack. Chapter 7. Ash. Fluttershy, Spike, and Twilight stared upwards into the smoky sky, wondering what on Equus they had just heard rumble down into their ears. "It laughed at us," Spike said. "Don't be ridiculous," Twilight said nervously. "Smoke can't laugh." Fluttershy cowered. "What if it isn't smoke?" "What?" Twilight asked. "Normal ash and soot don't stick to you like this stuff," Fluttershy said. "That's just part of the self-repair system," Twilight said. "Helps keep the fireplace from falling apart." She frowned. She had been under the Compulsia's influence when she realized that. Could that have been false? They all stared up at the sky. No more noises presented themselves. It was a silent, drab atmosphere. Twilight squinted her eyes in suspicion. She still sensed something going on up there. "Hey guys," Starlight said. "What you looking at?" The three of them jumped. "What? Am I absolutely terrifying?" Starlight asked, smirking. Twilight had a hoof to her chest. "Oh, Starlight. Check yourself for Compulsia Exponentia." Starlight lit her horn, thinking for a few seconds. Then her pupils dilated. "Why, you sneaky little—" "Just cure yourself," Twilight said, her frown deepening. "We have to do something." Starlight growled as she adjusted her mental state. Then she smirked. "I can start mass removing the Compulsia from every pony in town." "That's a good start," Twilight said, "but I don't think that solves the problem. We need to go to the source." "The place these things are made?" Fluttershy shrank back. "That sounds scary." "It probably will be," Twilight said, rooting around the laboratory, looking for the catalog. "You don't have to come." No, I need to," Fluttershy said, putting her hoof down. "I will go and help you. Pinkie deserved nothing less." "Thanks, Fluttershy," Twilight said, looking around frantically. "Did I burn it?" "Maybe," Starlight said, "but—" She closed her eyes and focused, a new catalog appearing in Twilight's hooves. Teleported that from, I don't know, somewhere in town. "Thanks." She looked at the back. "Made in the Dragonlands, 2768 Shale Rock Boulevard." Twilight spread her wings and ready to spell, her horn shining brilliantly. Such a long-range teleport would take a lot. "Start reversing the spells, Starlight." "On it," Starlight agreed, teleporting away. In a flash of violet, Twilight, Fluttershy, and Spike were somewhere else. The sky was mostly clear at the new location, even if it was a bit orange and ugly. The buildings were carved out of the sides of a grey mountain. The street was mostly deserted, but a few dragons could be seen slinking around or flying overhead. The few who saw them paid them no mind. One building stood out from all the others. A large structure, almost as tall as the mountain it was carved from. It had around a dozen chimneys coming out of it alone, though the smoke looked more normal than the kind seen in Ponyville. The building towered over all, making the ponies and small dragons seem insignificant. It was labeled with a large obsidian sign that read, "Soot Inc." in Draconic. Fluttershy gulped. This place didn't bode well. Twilight confidently strode up to the giant doors and rang the bell. It gonged loudly enough to shake the very ground beneath their hooves. A yellow dragon's head stuck out of a slit in the giant doors. "What do you want?" he asked. "I am Princess Twilight Sparkle of Equestria, and these are my friends, Spike and Fluttershy. We are here to see Mr. Soot." "Soot's busy," the dragon said, looking annoyed. Twilight twitched. "Well then, tell Mr. Soot that Twilight, his esteemed customer, is here to see him. Direct all legal complaints about Little Inferno Entertainment Fireplace to the appropriate spokesperson, a.k.a. not here." "Do you know who I am?" "Always wanted to say that," Spike muttered. The yellow dragon rolled his eyes. "You're a pony princess. Couldn't care less." Twilight almost went nuclear right then and there, but managed to compose herself. "Spike, take a letter. Dear Dragon Lord Ember, I am standing in front of Soot Inc. and am not being allowed to see Mr. Soot, despite the fact that it is imperative I do so with haste. I am being barred entry by a rather irksome receptionist. Would you care to remedy this? Just send an official seal if it's not too much trouble. Princess Twilight Sparkle. Oh, and Spike, on second thought, take another letter and send it to ex-Dragon Lord Torch." The dragon suddenly stood alert. You know Torch?" Spike grinned. "I was with Ember in the Gauntlet of Fire." "Shoot." The receptionist gulped, shiftily looking left and right. Nobody's supposed to know this, but Soot isn't here. He's on vacation." "Where?" Twilight demanded. The receptionist ducked inside to look at something. "Mount Scalar, right out of the town of Ponyville." "What?" Fluttershy said. "He's already there?" Twilight face-hoved. "Of all the... Give me a few minutes to charge up. Thank you for your time." She began to cast her teleportation in reverse. Soot stood atop the mountain, monocle in his black eye, glass of wine in his dark hands. He was a small, graceful dragon, black scales shining in the light of the night. His wings were spread wide as he basked in the swirling smoke cloud visible over Ponyville. It was almost complete, if his calculations were correct. The anticipation was cosmic. There was a flash of purple magic. He smiled. "Ah, so you did oust me after all. I was wondering if the sudden increase in activity down there was just a fluke." Twilight was going to speak, but Fluttershy cut her off. "Why?" Soot put a claw to his chin, never taking his gaze off the smoke. "Well, my dear, that is a long and arduous story, but I suppose I shall simplify it. I was tragically brought into this world with a birth defect. I couldn't breathe fire. For that, I was shunned. The Dragonlands were largely uncivilized back then, and I was never a physically strong individual. I do not resent any of them for their actions. It was the way of dragon culture. But," he smirked, "I became obsessed with fire. It became my one focus in life. I sought to study fire, use fire, understand fire. It was a childish requirement to make up for a perceived inadequacy, but the notion led me places." Twilight squinted. "How do you go from that to this?" she said, gesturing at the cloud. Soot flicked out his tongue, tasting the air. "I became a user of magic, specializing in fire and related magics. Being the intellectual I am, I sought out other uses for my newfound skills beyond that of simple fire breath. I became a scientist, one of the few dragons to do so. I experimented, invented, and just pondered draconic magic. I'd originally created the Little Inferno as an enclosure to test objects at high temperatures. But, but, I began to notice something about the soot I was creating. Something peculiar. As I ordered it to congeal, larger conglomerations of smoke would behave erratically." He waved his hand around, as if trying to illustrate a point. "It was like the sparks of something trying to assert itself over the physical nature of the ash, something beyond the soot that comprised it. He gestured to the smoke cloud over Ponyville. Needless to say, I was intrigued. I needed to carry out an experiment. But how could I get enough things to be burned? I didn't make much profit, and I did not know how much smoke would be needed. So I released the little Inferno as an entertainment product everywhere I could, loaded with a compulsia exponentia hidden deep within the complex spell matrices. All for what? Fluttershy asked. He turned to look at them for the first time. Why, to see what would happen, of course. What other reason do I need? The three took a step back from the dragon's crazed look. How dare you? Twilight yelled. This has ruined ponies' lives. It killed some pony. Soot shrugged. The death is regrettable. I really did try my best to make it safe to use. The ponies ruined their own lives. You know this. Compulsia exponentia can only enhance desires which are already latent in a subject, at least in the subconscious. He looked at Fluttershy with a curious look, but said nothing. That's not what I mean, Twilight yelled. How could you do something like this? Something that is making something dangerous right above a town filled with living ponies, just to see what would happen? Soot looked deep into her eyes. My dear, that is the core ideal of science. I figured you would understand, for that is how you used my invention. Experimentation, analysis, a desire to know. He gestured at the smoke again. All I want is to understand what is being created out there. I have no idea what is congealing, but I do know with a relative certainty that it's almost done. The world shook as the cloud asserted itself over the sky, solidifying into one amorphous shape. It contorted, twisted, rolled, and roared. Soot adjusted his monocle. The time has come to see the culmination of my work. Spike shuddered. You're crazy! No, merely curious. And psychopathic, Twilight countered. Merely a label. What you have done is wrong, Fluttershy said. You've exploited others for your own curiosity. We cannot let this stand. Go ahead, arrest me. You'll find that I'm unarmed, and while I am a rather skilled mage, I cannot face off against an alicorn. He chuckled. You'll also find that I don't care. I am about to answer my question. That is all I want. Fluttershy sighed. He's right, Twilight. He's not a problem right now. We have to help Ponyville. That ashen cloud can't be good. Twilight glared at Soot. Then she sighed. Fine. Let's go. She lit her horn and left Soot alone once again. He smirked. This was going to be paramount. Twilight, Fluttershy, and Spike appeared in town once again. The streets were deserted, though Twilight could see ponies huddled up inside, looking out in fear. She caught sight of a limping Rainbow Dash in Town Hall. They could see Starlight standing outside. The unicorn in question was standing in a magical circle, her eyes white and her body shining with a powerful aura. Several dozen translucent tendrils shot out of her, flying into the air. They pushed through the smoke cloud in an attempt to break up the rapidly solidifying cloud. The smoke cloud did not take kindly to Starlight's attempts to dissolve it, fighting back with a surge of strangely alien power. Starlight was surrounded by a sooty tornado and tossed to the ground hard. Ow, she said, hoof twitching. My hoof isn't supposed to bend that way. Starlight was healed by Twilight, and she quickly set her to the side. Then she looked up, her gaze piercing the cloud. To her surprise and horror, the cloud looked back. Celestia, it had a face. A poorly defined and fuzzy face, but there were obviously eyes and a mouth in that swirling mess. You burned me! Twilight shook. Who are you? I am what was burned. I am what was thrown away. I am what wasn't cared for. I am what was pointless. I am what didn't matter. I am ashen. You are everything we burned? I am all of it. Twilight dreaded the answer to her next question. How are you? Angry. Angry that I was dismissed. Angry that I didn't matter. But you did matter. You kept us warm. You gave us knowledge. You only burned what you deemed worthless enough to sacrifice for a fleeting heat. I was not the fire. I never was. I was what was traded for the fire. Twilight drooped. You're right. We didn't pay the things we burned the attention they deserved. We threw much in without thought. All things we knew we could do without, or things that only had one purpose, to burn. We were careless. We let ourselves be influenced in such a way as to destroy our own world, to alter our lives. But, she said, you have become something more, something with a mind of its own, something important, much more important than the things you are made of. You are the first of your kind ever to exist, and I extend my hoof to you in apology and peace, wishing to start on new terms. Do you know what it is like to be worthless? No, but I just said you weren't. Regardless of whether that's true or not, I used to be. I am what was once worthless. You cannot understand me or even apologize until you experience it. Experience burning. Ashen began to light on fire, becoming like a sun. Come be one with me. Understand. Be. See. Ashen, Fluttershy yelled. Not all of you was once worthless. What? Look inside yourself. Find a way to understand us, Fluttershy pleaded. See what we are, as something just as important as you. Discover the desire to smile. Find the part of you that is Pinkie Pie. What? What is this? Parties, fun, pink, happy, balloons. Strongest. Why? Why was she burned? She meant so much. The world is cruel, Fluttershy said, tears in her eyes. But you don't have to respond with more cruelty. Ashen was silent, returning to a smoky state. It shook. I matter just as she mattered. I can choose to burn or not. There is a choice, a good and a bad, but neither really satisfactory. Twilight looked up and smiled. I would be willing to be your friend, to teach you about us, and to learn about you, to help you find satisfactory meaning. I am temporary. What? I am unstable. I am smoke. I pollute and choke through my existence. I am too thick, too dense. What are you saying? Spike asked. I kill you by being here, by talking. I am dangerous. At first, I thought it would make you understand uselessness, but Pinkie Me Pink shows what it would truly do. Nothing. Nothing but more pain. No reason. No purpose. So I give myself a purpose. Save Pinkie's friends. Ashen began to dissipate, spreading throughout the sky, the world slowly becoming brighter. I will exist. I will watch, always. I will spread across the atmosphere. I will be all that which burns. I will be the place of Pinkie's rest. Goodbye. It was nice to meet you. Then it was gone. Ashen had spread too thin to be seen anymore, the smoke levels too low to even be smelled. The sun shone down on them, bringing the town of Ponyville into the light once more. It had endured. "Goodbye," Twilight said. "Thank you, Pinky." As much as I hate to say it in this way, given what happened, that went pretty well, all things considered. It didn't go well, but there was really no way that was going to go well moving forward. At least this way, things will recover. Anyway, thanks for listening. There's one more chapter and then that'll be the end. Have a good time, everyone. Goodbye.